have we run out of ideas? We're circling back around to a previously covered character because I want to say I'm not really a big fan of the video that I made on this character.
Okay.
And that's Thor.
Okay.
I made a video, Thor, Thor's cousin.
Cool.
Actually, a guy, contrary to popular belief, going to really promote diversity.
Guys can be whores? I didn't know that.
Absolutely.
Right,
It's called a himbo.
I like it.
But we're going to talk today about why a Thor game we actually think would be relatively easy to make. I talked before about the difficulties with making a Thor game, and like always, Nate and I are not game developers.
Right.
So, actually, we've made a lot of really cool things. You've just never heard of them. We're also in a lot of bands you've never heard of. So they're just, everything we made is so indie that it's good. But I do want to say, like, when it comes to programming, when it comes to asset building, stuff like that, we're not 3D modelers. We're not game developers. We don't learn how to code, like the good old Twitter and Reddit meme.
Right.
That's not us. We're just idea guys. And we like to talk about ideas for video games on a conceptual level that will never happen because nobody likes idea guys. So today's Thor. And this, Nate, is probably one of your favorite fictional characters ever. And I'm sorry to everyone who believes in the Nordic gods. I should say the fictional superhero version of Thor.
Thank you very much. You almost offended me there.
I don't want someone burning down like a wicker pyre or something with like my head on it to Thor later on. But you love this character.
Yeah, he's my favorite superhero.
And you thought that there has been Thor stuff before.
Yeah, they're kind of bad, though.
Yeah, especially the God of War-ish clone of classic God of War, which is Thor, God of Thunder, which is for PS3, Xbox 360, that kind of generation. That game is okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting about that game is I think it was actually on the right track, which was copying God of War. God of War is one of those games where on paper it does not sound like it works.
Right.
If you were to pitch God of War originally, I'm surprised it ever got picked up because it's basically, hey, this guy starts to become more and more powerful and he kills all of these gods by himself over time.
Right.
And that's it, right?
Yeah.
It's not really something that I would expect someone to think was a good idea because you have to get Kratos, you have to very slowly build him up in power level, make him fight stronger and stronger things. When it comes to Thor, he's the same kind of character. Obviously, he always started out powerful, but he's one of those characters that I think when you write him on paper, sounds like he wouldn't work for a game, but I think God of War actually proved that you can take a character like this, take them through a rich history of lore, around like the religions and various belief systems of, these characters, and especially Norse mythology. Nate, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about Norse mythology and how rich that is and how much there is you can do with it.
Yeah, Norse mythology is really rich. There's people like Thor.
Wow.
All right,
great.
so the game I think would be really easy.
And the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah.
Big Norse mythology group.
I'm a huge Norse mythology fan. No, I think one of the things that is cool about a Thor game, a potential Thor game, is the Norse mythology, like you said. There's so much of it. And one of the things I really liked about Thor Love and Thunder, actually, is that it explored a little bit of Norse mythology.
Mm-hmm.
I know we saw a little bit of it in Thor the Dark World, and obviously Thor, just the introduction of him and Odin and stuff, but Thor Love and Thunder actually showed more worlds, it showed more characters, it showed more gods, it showed a lot more stuff. And when you really dig into Norse mythology, you really see how rich the history is and how much they can actually include in here. There's the main 9 realms.
Mm-hmm.
You could have 9 different unique worlds.
And if you don't want to, there's even room for sequels.
Yeah.
If you want to have, like, go to Midgard, Asgard, and...
Right.
I don't remember.
Jotunheim.
Jotunheim.
Yeah.
If you want to have, like, those 3 for your first one, you can. And then maybe in the next one, it's go to Asgard and some other ones.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just pulling that out.
Well, there's one called Nipplheim that I like to call it.
Hot.
No, there's...
It's also a town in Final Fantasy VII. Nibelheim.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's named after this world. But...
No.
Okay.
It's the other way around.
Sorry. But anyways, so yeah, there's a lot of different worlds you can do. You can have them all be open world. I think that would be cool. It would really help you explore the different worlds in the universe there, and it would help you meet a lot of new characters, too.
Well, it would also help you with enemies.
Well, yeah, and
Thor's
like,
a god,
right.
so introduce more gods for him to fight.
Well, and an enemy, even like a basic enemy like the frost giants, for example,
Yes.
are probably going to be more powerful and harder to beat than, say, like the elves.
Right.
You know, it's just every world has its own unique world, right? And then when you go into basically their hell, you can fight like some like demons. There's a lot of like demons. Like I know Thor Ragnarok introduced Surtur, but there's also the goddess Hel. The name's just Hel.
Very creative.
Right. They weren't really forward thinkers there. They're like, hey, what should we name our god? The Hades of this word. Hell. Oh, okay.
Cool. That's
cool.
good.
I like it.
Yeah, it was better than Mean Fire Guy.
Right, exactly.
I do think, too, that with that, there's a lot of games already that we see Norse elements in.
Yeah.
You know, like, for
Right.
example, Skyrim.
Yeah.
With Draugr and
yeah,
stuff.
there's a lot of those, yeah.
There's all kinds of things, like maybe there's Draugr on Earth, or maybe there's ice giants in the ice giant realm. Like, no kidding, obviously. And you can have these enemies be very unique to where they are found, similar to God of War, where,
Right.
like, if you go to a certain area, you're going to fight a certain god or certain types of enemies, right?
Yeah.
I think that Thor really works well with that. And I was actually going to ask you, too, and I want to hear more of your points as well with the lore. But speaking of that lore, you put a lot of hours into Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Right.
And that's very inspired by Norse mythology, obviously mixed with the Isu and other stuff with Assassin's Creed. But, you know, seeing that's an example, despite what some people don't like about it, that's an example of Norse mythology games working right now. And I was going to ask you if there's stuff you'd want to see even from something like that. You know, ideas that were
totally
introduced there that could show up in a Thor game.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, there's a part where you can actually go into Asgard, and you can go into Jotunheim. They're through kind of flashback type stuff. But you can actually explore these worlds. And I think the story of that section of the game, I think, would be interesting for a Thor video game. Not to get into too heavy of spoilers here, but basically the story is about, obviously, the gods, but it's about, essentially, Ragnarok of, like, the old Norse mythology.
Which is a huge deal.
Right. And it introduces a lot of different elements. Like, you have the gods like Odin, Thor, you know, like the main ones. But there's also Loki. And he does his little trickery stuff there. I'm trying to keep it vague here.
Thank you.
But there's also cool other gods like Fenrir, which is a big wolf.
And lesser known, I think,
Right,
too. I think this would give you a big opportunity to actually dig up some of that deeper lore that maybe things like the MCU didn't get to. I mean, we got to see that with something like Guardians of the Galaxy, the game.
Yeah.
There was some deeper cuts because it just focused on the Guardians slice of Marvel. I think Thor has a lot of potential to do that with some of this lore you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think if you want to talk about the story, I think story mode of... Well, you could either do one of two things, because this is obviously going to be like a Marvel game. You could either do the story of Thor losing his powers, like from just the first Thor movie. I think that would be kind of an interesting thing.
Especially for a first game.
Well, yeah, like maybe there's a section of the game where you're just walking around as a guy, and you're on Midgard or Earth, and you're just a person. I think that'd be kind of interesting. And then obviously you gain your powers near the end, and then or maybe the middle or something. I don't know. But
I think if you slowly regain your powers over the course of the game, that would allow game progression too.
Right,
Kind of like, I mean, we already have that with a lot of superheroes. Like, look at Spider-Man. He starts out as Spider-Man, but then over the course of the game, he gets more gadgets, he gets more health, stuff like that. It's not all explained. Like, well, how does he get more health? I don't know. It's a video game.
Right.
There's certain things you just accept. Same with Batman. You know, where over the course of Arkham, he's gaining more unique tools and abilities and better armor and stuff. I think you could do something similar with Thor as he unlocks his power again, and then in a second game, because I think there's a lot of room for multiple games with Thor.
You could totally have it.
You could very easily do things with combining with other mythology. That's something I really like with Love and Thunder. I know a lot of people didn't like this movie. Put that aside for a second, but think about this conceptually.
Yeah.
You cross over the Nordic mythology now with just Greek.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Or other pagan gods, if you want to call them that, or whatever.
Or Jesus.
Or Jesus.
He can meet Jesus Christ. That'd be awesome.
Fight him. That's great. We find out, actually, that he was the one who put the nail in his side. He used Mjolnir to just very lightly tap it in. It's kind of messed up, but he was there. Now, yeah, there's a lot of stuff you could do with this, because I genuinely think a Thor game... When you look at Skyrim and you look at Oblivion and these Elder Scrolls games, and then you look at games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I think when you start getting into the religious stuff with these different time periods and their belief systems and stuff, and then combining it with modern day.
Yeah.
Same with God of War, just not modern day, really. The sky is the limit with what you can work with, because you're not just limited by Nordic mythology either.
Right. Well, and I think one of the things that you have, like, it's a staple for a Thor game, because in my opinion, the reason, or not the reason, but one of the reasons why the PS3 and Xbox 360 era Thor games failed so badly is, to me, they were very linear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with a Thor game, I think you have to have... I think it'd be cool to have, like, an open world game. I mean, look at games like Arkham. Look at games like Spider-Man, PS4. Games like that, where you're a superhero, you're running around a city, you're doing whatever. You actually feel like that character. You don't really feel like that character that much, or as much, if it's just a linear path. Where it's like, okay, now you have to run down this bridge, and there you go. You get to feel more like the character when you can actually open it up. And for someone like Thor, it's not just running around New York City or whatever. You can actually go and explore 9 different realms in the Norse mythology.
And then maybe even more when you get into other mythologies.
Yeah, if you morph it
games.
with Greek mythology or something like that too. To me, the open world element to a Thor game especially, I think is a needed feature of that game. I
think at the very least you would need open world linear.
Yes.
And open world linear is something like God of War, was it 2018, I think, the PS4 one?
Yeah.
I believe that was the year, sorry if it wasn't, where like it feels open world because there's all kinds of paths you can go down and things you can find, but you're still progressing through that world. You could always very easily do something like that with the different Thor areas too, especially if we're talking the first game where you're regaining your powers and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think as you get past that, you definitely need, at the very least in a second game, a much more open world.
Yeah,
to actually facilitate that.
Imagine a open world style like, the game's not out yet, but the Starfield game.
Yeah.
Where it's been advertised where you can actually go to all these hundreds of different planets. It doesn't need to be that big.
No.
But imagine a game like that where it's like, oh, I'm running around Midgard right now, or Earth. And then you're like, okay, well, now I kind of want to take the Bifrost, and I want to go explore Jotunheim. And you can just, like, teleport there and then go run around and do whatever you're doing there.
And for gameplay, I think that seeing something like a combination between... I don't think everything needs to be Arkham.
Right.
So I think seeing a combination between a kind of gameplay almost like Gotham Knights, Arkham, and Avengers, you know, where it's like this kind of free flow, I can't speak, combat.
You're sick of NBA.
I am. I was just thinking about
free throws.
My Lord and Savior Michael Jordan right there. You know, with all of this free-flowing combat, I think you could kind of combine that with almost an RPG element.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, something really cool that a lot of superhero games do is customization. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot of room to do that with Thor. Maybe you add some magic to Mjolnir, something like... I mean, there's different things you can do, right?
Right.
Maybe there's different upgrades somehow. I think especially cosmetics, Thor has a ton. I mean, off the top of my head, you have everything in the MCU for costumes. Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, classic Thor, the different Avengers variants, which there's at least 3 of.
I'd want a Thor costume of him in the Donald shirt, like just the T-shirt.
Yeah,
like what's his name, Donald Blake or something.
The one from
the original
Avengers?
Thor.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Avengers game one because he has one kind of like that too.
No. I meant like in the movie Thor, where he's just in that T-shirt and like the jeans or whatever he's wearing. You
could very easily do that too. I mean, there's a lot of Love and Thunder, obviously Ragnarok, and then you have all these different costumes from throughout the comics. You have classic Thor. You have the more modern look. You have, and what's interesting about this to me. I think to some people, they think, well, it's just a Thor game. It would just be about Thor forever.
Right.
And I think that that's true. He would be the center of a series. But think about this. There's at least 2 other characters I can think of throughout the games that could be made playable and very good. One is Jane Foster's Thor. Mm-hmm. And another is someone like Beta Ray Bill, who's like very unique and off-kilter and interesting. Yeah. Who a lot of people don't really talk about him very much. But I think you could very easily start to develop almost a universe out of this with side stories and other stuff going on. What I've always wanted is just a connected Marvel Games universe.
Yes.
They kind of refuse to do that. It's looking like Insomniac's is going to be its own universe, and then EA's it's going to be its own thing. And like, I don't know why they're doing it that way. I personally would prefer it to just be connected.
Well, yeah, they could have the Guardians of the Galaxy game with the same universe as Spider-Man.
Right.
Like, what's the point?
I don't think
have them be the same universe as the Avengers.
Well, especially when that's one of the things that was the biggest draw ever of the MCU and has made billions of dollars for Marvel. I would think that would be a no-brainer. But even if you didn't do that and you just were expanding from Thor, there is a rich universe to cover just with Thor characters.
Yeah. Well, and you could also spread out to have playable characters that aren't Thor or Thor variants. You could have, like his friends from the original Thor, like Volstagg and some of those characters you could play as. Lady Sif, you could play as her.
Well, I could very easily see, not just to get into Thor variants, because Beta Ray Bill is kind of his own thing.
Yeah, I like him. He's cool.
I could very easily see a game like Miles Morales about Beta Ray Bill.
Yeah.
I don't know what you'd call it. I think you'd still have to call it Thor or something.
I'd call it like Beta Male or something.
Beta Male. Thor Beta Male.
I'd call it that.
And
he is in the MCU.
That's true.
So
there's a lot of stuff you could do with this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, do you have any more to add? I think even with weapons, obviously you have Mjolnir, you have Stormbreaker. Those are a couple of them. There's a ton of classic Thor weapons from the comics that I'm blanking on names. There is also variants of these. So, for example, Thor's hammer / axe in the Ultimate Universe is different.
Yeah.
So there's like all kinds of different versions of Thor weapons you could use and armor and different abilities. There's the ability for family drama with Loki and Odin and all these other pantheons of gods.
Well, and even speaking of weapons, you could have Jane Foster. Jane Foster is when a ice giant hooks up with Jane Foster behind the scenes. I want to watch that. But Jane Foster's like exploding like in pieces Mjolnir. Mm-hmm. Where, like, she, like, throws it, but then, like, the pieces of Mjolnir spread out, and then you could have, like, weapons like that.
Yeah.
From Thor, Love, and Thunder. I don't know. There's a lot of different stuff you could do. Or even just outside of Mjolnirs. Obviously, you could have, like, a Norse sword or something. Like, some other weapon.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's very much an ability. This is something you see in God of War, is picking up abilities and your weaponry changing with different abilities over time.
Right.
I think that's something that could very easily be done because at the core of this game concept is magic.
Yep.
Which I know magic is a bit of a cop-out, but it allows you to have a ton of creativity and do different things with it without necessarily having to explain everything.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to sit down and walk people through Einstein's physics on Mjolnir.
Right.
People are willing to accept that Mjolnir works. Same with other magical elements like the bridge.
Right.
So, I don't know. I think there's a lot you could do with it. Do you have anything else to add?
Not really. I just really want to see a good Thor game.
Did I hype you up for something that will never exist now?
You did, yes, you did,
sorry.
and it kind of angers me.
That's the problem with this series, is like I feel like we end up talking about something.
Well,
we end up getting like a good 20% of people say, well, you don't know how to code, so you don't know what games are like. And, they say that from their basement with no coding ability. And then you have like the 80% that's like get hyped up and think, yeah, this would be awesome. And then it never happens. So.
Right. Well, and at the beginning you said, because no one wants to see hype people, but it's like, everyone wants to see idea people.
Right, but nobody wants to work with them.
Right.
Like,
I mean, I would.
No, I know.
If I was a CEO, I'd hire like a bunch of idea people like me. I'd hire people like me to be like, hey, you know this property, this IP, you're a big fan, what do you want to see? What would you want to play?
I just think it's funny because I constantly see like video game developer and games journalist meltdowns on Twitter and different places where they're like, everybody thinks they have ideas and like nobody likes idea people. People like people who know how to do what they're told and how to make things. And it's like, well, sure, but everything starts with an idea, whether you like it or not. And at the end of the day, even a man like Hideo Kojima, yes, he knows how to do this stuff. He knows how to code. You know what a lot of his specialty lies in? His ideas.
Right.
So I'm just saying we're basically him.
Please hire us, Hideo Kojima.
Hideo Kojima, bring us on. We love you. We love you so much. We could never compare. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Do you simp for Hideo? What are your thoughts on idea people? And why should we be paid billions of dollars by companies to come up with ideas and not do anything? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Would you want to see a Thor game? Would you want to see a horror game? I might want to see that too. See that. And what would that entail? Let us know. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. We appreciate you very much. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shway.